I saw it once
else
before.
had to read 3 or 4 or 9 think pieces about this movie?
I read a couple.
I
spent
what they
most of
thought.
my youth reading about this movie, so it was good to finally see it.
I didn't. I saw it in college, but not all the way through. They saw just they showed they showed a reel of it. That's all we saw for like the middle part. They only showed one reel of the film. It was 16 millimeter back then, right? And I read about it because we were all reading about this particular thing, and this is a much more important film than it looks in terms of how it changed.
Well, it's amazing how it doesn't really seem avant-garde now, because most of the stuff that it does has been assimilated into filmmaking.
Yeah.
Having
this is
said that,
this is obviously very influential in terms of like
confounding.
filming.
Yeah.
Really?
In as much as like you'd think that after however long it's been, 50 years of movies picking up where this thing left off.
60.
Yeah, right. I did find it occasionally quite confounding. And like I really kind of now I've had a couple of days to think about it, and I do think that I'm like landing on this is pretty great. But as I was watching it, all the things that it was doing through audiences in 1960 were having a similar effect on me in 2022.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure everybody read about how it got reacted to at Cannes, right?
Yeah.
Well, they booed it and walked out. And...
I gotta say though, the part where she's going down the hallway and everyone in the audience is yelling "cut, cut, cut" at the film. That's some pretty goddamn high level trolling for a movie. Like,
well, but that's what Cannes was famous for.
Okay.
But then it won, or it was nominated. I think
it won the jury prize.
It won the jury prize. Yeah. So
right.
Yeah, well, Antonioni got he and what's her name fled the screening, and he got a letter that was signed by a bunch of the filmmakers who were there that were like, no, actually, your movie's really good. Like, it sucks that it got treated this way by the audience.
The least photogenic island vacation in the history of cinema.
Yeah, they found
the ugliest piece of pumice to stand around and wander around in flip-flops.
I mean, that's debatable though, because
part about it,
right? Like,
I mean, that's probably why me and Tad picked that background. It's just kind of otherworldly.
You might not.
It almost
wrong,
looks like
but
Mars.
They made it look amazing.
Yes.
Like, regardless of. Like, I mean, I think one thing we can probably all agree on in this film, maybe more than this, but
cinematography,
right? And the exposure. I've never seen better exposure in any film. I think ever.
They always these black and white films of this era. They always, when you're in the transfer, it's always bumped up a little too high. This one's perfect. It's down.
It's perfect. Like I don't know where you guys watched it. I watched it on the Criterion channel.
Same here.
I watched Criterion.
It was gorgeous. It's
beautiful,
like stabilized
print.
It's like spotless.
Yeah,
it's spotless, and the contrast is great, and also the composition is really quiet.
Although there were a couple of frames that had hairs in it, though. I don't know.
More than a couple.
Yeah,
there's some hairs.
One up here, one down here.
Yeah.
There's
but still,
this seems like the one behind Chris. Though I'm like, God, I wish this was in color. I really do, because
I found myself wishing that repeatedly.
Yeah,
except for the water, I think it would be the same color that it is.
I know.
That's what I wonder. I just kind of like to see it.
The water would be that great Mediterranean.
I know they tilt down to that translucent water.
See, I never once
if you do this
wanted
one
it to
in
be
color,
in
it
color.
turns into The Passenger.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This to me was exactly how it's supposed to be. I never wanted it in color.
I thought The Passenger was kind of gritty looking. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird.
Well, it was gritty, but it also had there were a lot of similarities I found going back to it.
So Jim and I were talking about something before we started, which is this is a movie that really demonstrates why shooting on location is good. Yeah. Because you could never make something like this in a studio, because the scenic artists would want to touch it up. They'd want to put plants there, and they'd want to put, color and things like that. Whereas no, this is bare rock and that house that one guy lives in. Like that's the only thing that's there.
Right.
Like
and Chris was right about composition. Like the way Antonioni what he frames, the way he composes. Almost every time it just feels spot on. It's just it feels right.
There were so many screen grabs I wanted to pull off this thing because they're all great.
At the end, that town with a big cathedral in it at the very end of the film.
Oh yeah,
that was that was like something
Beautiful.
out of a medieval sketch.
Weird. No, before. I think
that was
before
astounding.
Oh, is that the one?
It was
the cathedral one.
And they were at the house. You could look. So they were standing on the balcony, and it was just that entire cityscape.
But my favorite one is the one that you. My favorite one's the one that you grabbed in the chat, Scott, which was actually, I think it was Noto, they called it. And,
oh yeah.
That was that. It was more of that square town. It was
the place where the place where there was nobody there.
No, it was the place that was empty, right?
Yeah,
the empty place. To me, that was one of the most gorgeous parts.
And also meaningful. I mean, the thing about this film that I learned early on about Aventura, in school or whatever, was it's an existential story. It's about a person just vanishing, and people, are concerned. Oh my God, because they're pathetic. People are empathetic. People care. They look around. They do everything they can try to find her. And then the rest of the film, you're watching this fade away. Yeah. And near the end of the film, you realize that these came to the realization that a person's gone and no one cares. That could be me.
This is about how people are forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And coming to that town, there's empty city.
No matter where you go, you're going to get bored.
Talk about a transitional moment.
And no matter who you're with or what you do, you're going to get bored.
These towns are empty. There's just cathedrals and nothing, and you realize that that's basically how the world's going to work for us.
Because all of us. The town before they go to Noto, which is that empty place, I thought was a set for another movie.
It's called Santa Panagia.
Yeah.
Santa Panagia. Okay.
Yeah.
The thing about that is it's the church even was decommissioned, or it was never commissioned because it doesn't have a cross on it. There are no bells in the belfry.
There's no bell in the belfry. It's bizarre.
Just like this. It's like art. Here you go.
Well, it was all commissioned by Mussolini, so it's that fascist.
It had fascist overtones.
It's like it has that Italian style, but it's so stripped down that it's just like flat surfaces. There's no ornamentation of any kind.
I think that's why I liked that, and I think he's commenting on that probably, Jim, when I think that's the scene where she's yelling through the
she goes through the blind.
And it's echoing, but there's no one in there. She even says
like it's hollow.
It's empty.
Like Italy.
It reminded me a little bit of the sets from the Shakespeare movie we just watched.
Well, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
it reminds me of George's Chirico. That's the thing. It's like, you ever seen his art? It's just like,
I love it. I love the little girl running with the ball,
with arches and like mysterious stuff going on and long shadows. Just like that.
There's always something like around the corner.
Yeah. It felt
you feel like there's something.
You feel like there's something.
But there's it's also weirdly it's kind of like that Eddie Izzard joke about how Americans think that all British people live in castles, and he's like, it's true. We're up to fucking here with castles. Like you got to driving down the street and you're like, fuck, I got to drive around this castle, and it's like that's what it's like with churches in Italy and like palazzos and stuff like that. They're fucking everywhere. So you can abandon a beautiful town with a beautiful church because it's like there's another one down the street. You don't have to stay here.
Yeah.
Speaking of beautiful, I think obviously like another thing that just is fascinating to watch is Monica Vitti is just
I sort of understood all of a sudden the fascination with her because I don't think I've seen her.
Totally, 100%.
Same here.
Yeah. Now, Italian women in general at this era were prized in an international cinema because
this movie's full of beautiful people, but her
acting style is in contrast to everybody else because the guy who plays Sandro is your typical sort of Italian male actor.
Yeah, I've seen him like a dozen times already in this show.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that this movie took several opportunities to point out that the national sport of Italy is catcalling, because there's that whole scene
where she's surrounded by these guys.
Where I didn't get to take the screenshot of it, unfortunately. But how many fucking extras did they have in that scene where the prostitute pulls up to the pharmacy, and there's like
100 of them.
Well,
and they're all yelling and screaming and
Okay, somebody explain that
like
scene to me because I was stumped. It was like she wrote a book and
she's a prostitute or an actress.
She said she wrote a novel.
I think she was becoming. I mean, Chad's probably right, but I think she was on the verge of becoming like a famous person of sorts.
Right. Yeah, she's a famous person. but she's an incredibly high-end 50,000 lira per go prostitute, and that's why she's got the torn thing on her skirt and stuff like that.
But
like,
I think
whole
John's
thing is,
right. I think.
But is she like trans? Is she becoming like a Kardashian at this point?
I don't think so. I think all of that stuff about the book and all of that is bullshit. It's just a way of her explaining why she's famous to people, and then everyone
cover. Yeah.
It's what's his name? Troy Duffy talked about this in the commentary on Boondock Saints, where he put Ron Jeremy in the movie because he wanted people to have that moment where they're sitting there watching the movie and go, "Oh, I know him." And then everyone kind of awkwardly sits there while no one explains why they know who he is.
That's probably it.
It's that, like, the socially acceptable thing that she does is write novels while she's in a trance, whereas she's actually famous for being a prostitute.
Right. Although partly you mentioned
earlier, there is a whole sort of outlook on women and sexuality in this that you know is included, and the catcalling scene, and then the
which was amazing.
Well, just I don't know.
Taking that piece of shit back.
Yeah,
right.
She's also not Italian because her Italian accent is atrocious.
Yeah. Well, in that catcalling scene where she's in the square and he's just surrounded by these shorter, darker guys who were just it was getting ugly until they took it back.
There are no women.
None whatsoever. The thing is,
she had to go into the paint store.
I'm not sure if that was just straightforward or they're making a commentary about, Romans versus Sicilians. Because I
think it was a dig at South Italian.
Yeah. So,
it is racialized. It definitely is.
Yeah, it felt that way.
However, even then, anytime she walks down a hallway, somebody checks out her ass. Yeah. Like literally every time she walks away from the camera, one of the men will turn around and look at her ass.
Yeah,
which actually is kind of realistic. And
but
there was that one where it was like an older gentleman. He said, who's that lovely lady or something like that.
The Marquess.
Yeah, he asks a bellhop or something.
He asked the bell, and it's the guy who runs the hotel, and he goes, "I don't know, she just arrived."
Yeah, she literally just walked in. I read I think it was just someone commenting on IMDb, which is, I know it's sketchy, but it was an interesting take though. Someone said that they wish the movie would have ended when she was searching for Sandro at that last hotel.
Where she finds him with Perkins.
Yeah, she finds him with the prostitute. But someone said, wouldn't it have been cool if she never found him? And that's how the movie ended.
Yeah.
I thought it's a different movie.
Yeah, that would have been better than this.
Well, it was kind of cool. I was like, I like that.
But it would turn into a Buñuel film. It would turn into like The Exterminating Angel.
No. It would just be more like it would turn it from. I think it would turn it from this existential kind of, like what we were talking about dealing with, like how people move on and in such a weird way, or half-ass care about when really tragic things happen. It would move it from that to more of a really fucking cerebral, like almost like mystery.
I can see that.
Well, we're going to get to that in about 10 minutes.
Well, it's also it would turn it a little bit into the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode where everyone on the crew starts disappearing.
Oh, right. And the only one who remembers
it's just Crusher who's left.
Yeah.
But I will say, Scott,
one of the best episodes, by the way.
It is.
What?
Or not. Sorry, not Scott. Chris. I don't think that ending is her necessarily taking him back. I think it's intentionally left ambiguous. Like, because she could also put her hand on his head and be like, "No, we're done." Like you.
I would like to think so.
I didn't interpret it that way. I interpreted it as she's settling for, okay, I'm going to take this guy.
But
back.
I also
kind of what I'm leaning toward.
My interpretation was based on watching a lot of Douglas Sirk the week before. And
I've been doing that too because it's on Criterion.
I know they're all of them. It's great. So she's up there. She puts a hand on the hand on the shoulder, and basically it's like, you're hopeless, but I'm hopeless too. We're hopeless. This is how it is.
Well, and also the tear, like finally they cry, right? For like the first time.
Yeah.
And I part of me was like, this is finally they're crying for Anna, maybe a tiny bit, being like,
I don't think so.
I disagree. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Crying for themselves.
To me,
crying for themselves.
That could have been cathartic. That really.
Well, see that. Okay, well, I also thought crying for themselves too. See, I felt both, and I was like, that's a little more ambiguous.
Because they're reflecting back. Says Anna disappeared. We're fated to do the same thing one of these days.
Because like
the existential pull,
Sandro like forgets about Anna like within the next morning.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. That was
he'd have forgotten about her before she disappeared.
He had that argument, right?
Yeah. He says, and he even says when she's missing, it's like this is just like her to do something like this.
Right.
But also,
which is the grossest line in the entire thing.
Where did she go? It's a fucking island.
But she's the one that's like, in the beginning, whether he means it or not, he's the one that's like, let's get married, let's fuck. And she's the one that's like, I don't know if I want any of this. I don't know if I want anything.
No, she was definitely wants to run away. She wanted her own life. She wanted to get away from all this. Maybe she saw it was coming.
Every person in this movie is.
She's
which
actually
made it feel like
the old
there's
guy.
because she disappears. That boat goes from around the island and takes off, and then you're like thinking about this dude's like, did he just bump her off, or did she run away? You know what I mean?
It's really interesting.
Where would she run? It's an island.
That they shot, they filmed and then didn't include, apparently for time reasons, which I don't know how you did anything for time reasons in a movie this fucking long.
No shit.
Sorry, Tad. I'm gonna channel Tad for a second. This movie's too fucking long.
Sure is.
It's a bit long.
It's long.
They drag her body out of the ocean. Like they literally find
shoot
her
it, or
body.
You don't cut something like that for time. That changes the whole goddamn movie.
Everything.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Antonioni said they cut it for time, and again, that's horseshit.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, he made a decision because they do show the divers in this version, but they come up with nothing.
Yeah.
So
no, that's great because you have an element of almost supernaturalness to it.
yeah, I love it. That's the best part.
Well, it would have been the last.
Jim,
It also would have been
Jim,
the last
Jim,
thing in the film.
Jim,
It would have been the end.
What, Jim?
He's living with the old guy. He just hid her in one of the.
She hid in a hole until everybody left. Now she's living with
There's
the
a
old guy.
basement, that little tiny house, and she's just
That
kind of
house,
leave, right?
It's like a 007 villain lair.
So I like it. There's lots of
funny,
room
it's
to move around.
Blofeld.
Lots of
It's
goats
funny
to
you
eat.
said that. It's funny you said that because I kept thinking this is what's going on with all of the people who play Baccarat with James Bond who aren't the villain in him. Like this is where the rest of those people at the table go after they're done.
This is their lives. This is their lives. Yeah. So my theory is that basically everybody in this movie is the same person. They're all the same. They're all rich, and it's so hard to be rich and have nothing to do. And that's the message of the movie to me.
Yeah,
What does
definitely part of it.
Fellini does it. He comes up with the same thing, but it's
La
a
Dolce
lot more
Vita.
fun to watch.
La Dolce Vita, right?
Yeah, La Dolce Vita.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like all these people are trying so hard to have a good time and they just fucking can't.
Yeah.
But also, if you're talking about that, there's the rich people on that boat have various reactions to it, which is fascinating. Some cared, some didn't. Most didn't.
But ultimately, it didn't matter. And the thing is, like the time that elapsed before it didn't matter was so short. It was like he kisses her on the boat, which is like, no, don't kiss me. My friend's missing. Your fiance, she's missing. Then he chases her down on the train, Monica Vitti, and he jumps on the train and he tries again, and she's like, no. What are you doing here? So 3 days later, my friend is missing. That's bad. But 5 days later, my friend is missing. Oh, okay. What the fuck? And they were together. And then they're together. And really the search for Anna is just the search for Anna is really just an excuse for them to have this like fling and go.
This wonderful cross. Yeah, a nice trip to the Sicily and just check out the countryside.
Did you guys notice? And I kept watching that scene where they finally make love in the grass in that weird abandoned town, and the train goes by. Finally, actually do it. They consummate it, right?
Yeah, which is a great scene.
It's a great scene. It's a great scene in that it looks like neither of them are enjoying themselves at all. There's no
desperation. There's a desperation to it.
There's no connection. They're just going through the emotions, trying to make
couple I've ever
Because you know why, John? Because he's thinking about his mother. He never gets to see his mother.
It's like, I thought Italians were supposed to be hot-blooded lovers, and this was like
he's thinking about sports or his mom.
Is this why you think he fucked up that guy's sketch of the remember that at the end you fucked up that guy's sketch of the church?
Yeah.
You kick the ink.
Yeah,
under
Oh,
it.
that's a great scene.
No, that's just because he's a psychopath.
Yeah,
He
he's
is.
an absolute
Playing with his
sociopath.
keys
He's
on
a
the end of
sociopath.
that
But no,
screen.
the reason
I figured
why
that
they're not
scene is in
enjoying
there
each
so that
other.
we hate this guy even more than we already did.
Yeah.
No, it's like John said though. When they finally are intimate, they're already over it. They're
Yeah.
already like, I don't fucking who cares? Like,
Yeah.
Well, you know,
it's that discontent.
it's the Don Juan principle, right? It's like, okay,
Oh.
I've got this conquest, but
It's
he's already
marks-
thinking about
it's
the
marks
next.
on
He's
the
already
headboard.
thinking about what's next.
It's marks on the headboard. Like that's
Yeah.
all he's doing is marks
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the headboard.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because that is shown a little bit earlier in the film on the train where they're watching the guy who has no game hitting
No
on the
game.
woman,
Right.
Right,
They're
right.
laughing.
They're laughing. Yeah.
which is also to me one of the funniest things in the world. Like watching a guy who has no game hit on a woman, like that's just I will buy extra drinks at a bar so I can continue to watch that happen.
Yeah, right.
Duh,
Boy,
where are you
I hope
from?
it's happening. I hope it's happening to somebody I'm friends with too, because that's going to make it even funnier later.
Oh.
That scene is probably my
Want to
favorite
come see
scene
my
in the movie.
etchings?
No. Going to a bar and seeing
Oh, that's the other guy.
Seeing a woman at a bar
The artist.
with earbuds in or reading a book.
Mhm.
It's like you get a night's entertainment out of that, because guys will walk up to him and like, can you
Yeah, trying to get them to take their earbuds out.
I know it's so ridiculous.
You know what this means?
I'm
It
embarrassed
means
on their
she doesn't
behalf,
wanna
so I
talk
don't
to
enjoy
you.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, see, I don't have a sense of shame. So
Also,
Okay.
but then Monica Vitti's character, she's kind of like this tall, gorgeous blonde from Rome, and so she's kind of like a target in this film.
Well, the Sicilians think she's French. They say
Yeah,
that
there
like
you go.
3 or 4
Yeah, is she
times.
French? Is she French? Yeah.
Is she French?
Uh-huh.
So I got an interesting nugget from Sight and Sound. There was an article about it, and they were talking about Monica Vitti, and they said her and some of the other European actresses that came out at that time that were so sensual. They said it set the standard and look for a new sexualized European movie star that was key to the successful foreign film invasion that hit English language shores.
Damn right.
And was perceived as such a threat by LBJ and his White House crony Jack Valenti that they set up the American Film Institute as a nationalist bulwark against the foreigners supposedly taking over U.S. cinemas. Imagine thinking that foreign films were a threat to the U.S. box office. What a
Imagine
time.
thinking that confoundingly obscure and obtuse and what the fuck is going on foreign films would be a threat to
Right?
They have
Middle
it right at the
America.
beginning
Yeah.
where they take their clothes off. You have that tease scene
Uh-huh.
where they're in the boat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying on each other's clothes.
Yeah.
The entire history of America going back to the colonies is a series of moral panics. It's just a cascading series of moral panics that has followed it through all the way to today, where the moral panic is like, oh, people are shoplifting. Like it's just
That's
just
what we do. That's how we get things done there, anyways, by panicking about things. But the
Oh,
AFI, though, it's true. It was established in the mid '60s by Valenti as a way of kind of like promoting American
And LBJ.
LBJ. That's it.
I had no idea.
Yeah, LBJ wanted to stop this kind of thing. He started the AFI. Exactly 10 years later, the AFI financed Eraserhead.
And you know why? Because
we have our own
the
weirdness in
American
our own
film
country.
industry has
This
always
movie sort of
been
resembles.
frightened. The American
I'll
film
tell you
industry
something.
has always been frightened by the fact that the government would step in and impose censorship, just like in Europe.
Uh-huh.
And so they were worse than any sort of government.
This movie
censorship.
was censored. The love scenes were edited.
Yeah.
Like
like
it was
for the United States?
No, in Italy.
In Europe.
In
Also,
Italy.
that trailer that I put on in the preview, that's like this was being sold as like softcore porn. No, that thing.
I'll tell you something.
That was the whole thing, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that
one
scene-
of the reasons that the French New Wave took off was because it had like
You could see boobies and stuff.
you could see boobies. And
Well,
shit.
yeah. there's-
Like that scene, Jim, you're talking about where they're changing after the swim.
Yeah.
And she's putting on they're like sharing clothes and anyway, that whole scene,
the eyes at each other.
that whole scene turned me on more than like any porn I've ever seen in my fucking life.
Because
dude.
they
Like,
didn't show anything.
Right. It was this
didn't
tea.
show
It was
anything, but
oh god, it was like the
the
tease
other thing
of-
about that is there's this, and also in Picnic at Hanging Rock, there's this hovering sort of homoeroticism.
Oh my God! Yes.
Well, we'll get to that.
I'm sure was turning.
Also,
on
I don't know
the
what you
more
guys are talking about, but no
sophisticated
boobies in this
audience.
film. There are plenty. They're just
There are.
sketched.
You're
They're
right.
just
There are
drawings.
drawn.
Oh yeah, there they are.
There they are.
This was 1960s hentai.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
right.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, baby.
So-
Look at those sketches.
So I feel like we're all kind of in a, like, looks great, compositions are great.
Too
acting's
long.
great, it's
Too
a little
long.
too long. Back to my initial comment, like as I'm watching this, going, what the fuck is going on in this movie? It just
Yeah.
keeps like, there's a thing, and then they sort of drop the thing, and they move on another thing, and they sort of drop that, and I did find myself constantly scratching my head, and I, like I said, I had to go and kind of like read several think pieces to kind of like, nope, that was the point.
Right.
And I'm kind of like, why do I assume like every time I see a David Lynch movie that this is what I'm in for, and it just like washes over me, and I don't even try to like follow it. I maybe because like I know that this is one of, you know, Scorsese's 20 movies you got to see before you die. I know that it's highly regarded. I don't know why I thought because it was made in 1960 that it was going to have a plot or something.
It's a
much stronger
post-war
narrative,
movie.
but it's definitely loosey-goosey, and that was by design. And in retrospect, thinking about it after the fact, like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, that's pretty fucking cool. In the moment, it was making me nuts.
Yeah. Well, this film walked so Terrence Malick could run. If you ask
Oh,
me.
for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
This informed a lot of how art films were made or independent films were made after this.
Maybe that's why I didn't like it.
Plus,
Maybe.
you have to remember the context. This movie came out in 1960.
Oh, it must have blown
Basically, the
minds.
50s in Italy was what, you know, they were still recovering when they weren't doing neorealism. They were recovering from the white telephone era, which
Right.
was just these incredibly stupid flicks.
This film is such a singular vision
Mm-hmm.
and execution, and for that time period, yeah, I mean, I think this is obviously way ahead of its time.
Yes.
And it's redefining. I mean, that's why people use these seemingly hyperbolic words, is because this did redefine cinema in a way.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And it's absolutely not. Excuse me, Jared. I was going to say it's absolutely not neorealism in that.
No.
Oh God,
it's
it's
not.
a
It's very
reaction
lyrical.
against
It has no sympathy for anybody on screen.
Nobody. No. Who do I like in this
It's-
movie?
it's
Nobody.
so
Not a good character in the whole
because
thing.
it's La Dolce Vita. It's this
The good
empty
the
fucking
the
shit.
dude
Right.
dude who lives in the shack is cool.
Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah.
The
He's
Totally.
poor.
yes, and the boat captain is cool.
Yeah.
Like that
Sure.
guy, he's one of the only people who actually gives a shit that Anna's missing too. Like,
Mhm.
like there are redeemable characters.
the
in this
wife,
film.
the wife,
The
of
wife,
the,
yes.
With the little doggy?
No, the wife.
Oh,
of
the one that she runs
the wife
into
of
at the party.
the drugstore guy. She was.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that whole drugstore guy scene is great. too.
Yes.
Yeah, he comes out when he doesn't he tells the guy basically to fuck off. Then when Monica Vitti shows up, he comes out. Do you smoke? You want a cigarette?
Yeah, pretty much. Then the wife shows up. It's like, what the fuck is going
Well,
on?
and even the
yeah.
even the reporter who might be a heroic character in a lot of other movies only runs the story the second time because he gets bribed by Sardo. Like it's one of those
Right.
like there are so few redeeming characters in this movie that you
Oh,
are
God,
just
that
kind of
reporter,
grasping at them.
He's like, can
Well,
you get
there
it
are
back
no
in the papers?
redeeming
Like, why? It's
characters in
cool. No one
Italy.
cares.
Yeah. Nobody cares. Right.
Yeah, but I'm just amazed at the, like Scott mentioned Malick, and I think that's appropriate.
Sure.
I'm just amazed at
It's Malick,
what I see
it's
as like the control.
Cassavetes.
Well, the control.
It made me think of watching Solaris. It was the same experience of like, I get this. I understand it. I can't say that I'm enjoying every minute of this.
Right.
You know, like,
Or in
okay.
some cases, any minute of
You're right. Yeah. So it's like it's in that slow cinema tradition too. Of it's like they're gonna search
Any
for
of their
that girl.
It's like slow
movies for
food.
sure.
It came out of Italy too.
So Jared, what brought this on?
This is the ragu bolognese of fucking
well,
movies.
I mean, I think we all know that Monica Vitti died last week. So
Yeah,
That's
right.
nice. That was a nice
that
tribute.
was
Yeah.
yeah, that was part of it. And the other thing was we're gonna
Well, this is a
We'll
theme.
see it in the second.
Yeah, your
We're
theme
gonna
is
go
pretty
wander
obvious. I
off.
love your theme.
We're gonna go on to the next one, but
Mhm.
yeah, when I thought about, oh God, like Monica Vitti just died, and I was like, I've only seen La Ventura once, and I remember it really leaving an impression on me. And I thought, and for years I've been like, I need to watch that again. I need to watch that again. And then of course, so her death reminded me, and then I thought about, we'll talk about it, but I had never seen Picnic at Hanging Rock. And it's been on my short list for like years. And I thought, wait a minute, obviously there's a very, very, obvious theme.
There's definitely a connection.
Yeah. So I thought, what a great, like, it's the kind of double feature where I wish I could have invited you guys over to my house and we could just all watch it together, like, and just explore these themes.
I mean, I'd be full
definitely
bolognese and
watch,
red wine right now, like talking about this film, like at your house, basically.
Yeah.
That was a good. I'm not going to do the impression again.
Eclipse in the Night.
Yeah.
Do you have enough floor that I can lay on in the middle of this? Because I could do that.
That's the other note I took down. It's like, oh look, Monica Vitti's laying down on the floor. Even she can't stay awake during this.
Yeah, she sleeps on
took me 2 nights
on her suitcase.
It was a struggle. It took a while. I didn't rewind.
We did it all one night.
The middle part because I fell asleep during it.
But but you'll sit.
Got a narcotic
4-hour.
But you know what? The thing is, wait a little bit. This is as good a presentation.
No, I won't do that either, Jim.
The Criterion presentation is good. You're ever going to see this movie.
It looked great.
It's beautiful.
I will say, Jared, thank you, because like I said, it's one of those like movies you got to see before you die.
Yeah.
I don't know when I ever would have got to this.
Yeah, same here.
Does anyone know if this was done by the same transfer house that's done some of the other Janus films that we've watched recently? Because
probably a lot of them,
there's that one transfer house in like Germany and they take like a year to do these transfers. And I just wondered if anybody knew, but if not,
I could look it up.
But they do the stuff like they actually take all the frames and stabilize them.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't get any.
I can't get my head around why they didn't get rid of all the hair.
Yeah,
the little hairs in the corner.
Maybe the only print they had the hairs on them.
But they can, reminds you there's a film going on. That's kind of helpful. All right, wait. Thumbs.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, you're kind of in the middle there.
Worthy pick.
Yeah, I'm glad I saw it. How about that?